Excellent. Good evening. This webinar is a continuation from earlier webinars this year focused on energy efficiency. For 2023, the Board of Directors for the Interreligious Eco-Justice Network decided to focus on climate change with special attention to how climate change intersects with two other issues, energy justice and food justice. Energy efficiency is the topic for tonight because energy efficiency can help us significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, energy usage, and energy costs. As I always like to say, the greenest and cheapest energy is the energy that you are not using. We are pleased to be able to offer Spanish interpretation for this webinar. We are joined by Camila Ospina as our interpreters. I would like to offer brief instructions on how to select Spanish as your language. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a globe with the word interpretation. Click on that, and from there, choose Spanish. In the same box, choose Mute Original Audio. Por favor, recuerde seleccionar su lenguaje en el globo de la parte inferior de su pantalla para interpretación. Desde su celular, toque los tres puntos y seleccione su lenguaje. After my presentation, we will have a moderated Q&A session. Please put your questions in the chat or the Q&A. It is my pleasure to introduce Reverend Harry Riggs from the American Baptist Churches of Connecticut. We are very grateful that ABCONN is co-sponsoring this webinar with us this evening.
Hi, Terry. Thanks a lot. I just want to welcome everyone to this evening's webinar and thank Terry for reaching out and testing my interest to see if, we'd be interested. I believe that care for our environment is of utmost importance. And so it was a no-brainer for me to say yes. And particularly when she said, hey, and I'll do all the legwork. I was like, yay. But seriously, many of you know that I am a skier. And this past winter was a very warm winter. And if it was not for a couple of really cold days where they were able to blow snow, this season would have been a bust. So this is something that's very personal to me as I watch the weather get warmer from when I was growing up in Michigan, when winter started in November and went all the way till the end of March. And I mean, it was cold because we were near Canada. And now we have rain midwinter like everyone else. So I'm glad everyone's here. Terry, again, thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to you now.
Thank you so much, Reverend Riggs. And yes, you are right. January was 10 degrees warmer than normal in Connecticut, and we were 30 to 40 inches below snowfall, average snowfall. So I'm going to get started. Let me find my presentation. All right, and from the beginning. All right. So the first thing I actually wanted to highlight was that we are in our legislative session in Connecticut, and there is a bill that was supposed to increase funding for energy efficiency measures that I'm going to talk about tonight. It was $20 million in funding for home energy solutions and the Home Energy Solutions Income Eligible Program. And the bill did not make it out of committee, but it could be added to the budget for the state. We need it because we need the jobs, we need the energy efficiency work, and part of my presentation will be discussing some of the Inflation Reduction Act funds that are due to come to states. If we don't have the workforce in place, it will be hard to get that funding. So this is a justice issue as well. I will have this slide will be available obviously after the presentation, but if you are so inclined, please call your legislator plus Speaker Ritter and Senate President Looney at these numbers and urge them to prioritize adding this to the budget. So I want to give a little bit of detail on why we talk about energy efficiency and how it relates to the other issues, because churches are already we're already responding to all of these crises. So energy justice is the first thing I wanted to raise. Low-income houses have an energy burden that is 3 times higher than higher income households. And low-income households are less likely to be energy efficient. The energy burden forces people to choose between paying their energy bills and buying food or medicine. I know that churches receive requests for assistance every single week, and some of them every single day, for people who are looking for help to pay their bills. And here is a slide on some energy usage facts. A typical home uses 30% more energy than an energy efficient one. In 2020, Connecticut used more electricity than in 2019, and I'm sure those numbers have continued to rise. In 2020, this increase in electricity also coincided with an increase in days over 90 degrees. Interestingly, people spend 30% more on electricity in the summer than the winter. We tend to think of utility costs as increasing in the winter because we're trying to stay warm, but really, people use far more electricity because they're trying to stay cool. And the average electricity bill in Connecticut is 19% higher than other states. Another reason we should really be looking at this from a sort of a moral perspective is air pollution that comes from power plants. Power plants are the second largest polluter of both soot particulate, air pollutants, and greenhouse gas emissions. Pollution from power plants, heavy industry, and transportation causes ground level ozone, which is a precursor to smog. It is what forms when pollution emissions get hot and humid. This ground level ozone is linked to asthma, increased infections, lung problems, death in the elderly and very young, and more heart attacks and strokes. And it might surprise you to know that our entire state of Connecticut is in non-attainment for air quality by the federal government. And I believe 4 of our counties receive an F in air quality from the American Lung Association. Climate change in 2022. I got these numbers. These are extremely recent numbers. In 2022, climate change caused $165 billion in damage to the US alone, including 18 storms that were over $1 billion each. 3.4 million people had to leave their homes in 2022 in the US. And there were 5 1,000-year rain events. I think there were 8 hurricanes and 6 tropical storms. And the drought caused Nevada's Lake Mead to drop to 26% of its capacity. So climate change is impacting us already. We're already seeing it. And again, religious communities are we're the first ones to respond. Religious communities, churches, we donate money for victims of hurricanes and wildfires. We address hunger, a lack of access to food. When people are sick, we help them. We help people pay their bills. So we're already addressing these things. So for us, part of the work that the Interreligious Eco-Justice Network does is to highlight how we can address these things from the starting point rather than just the reactionary point. So the first program now I will talk about the different programs. I'm sorry, the Spanish, Camila asked me to wait and give her a chance to catch up in between my slides. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the federal program. Now, this is part of the Inflation Reduction Act. It is by no means the only program available, but is the first one that I have really been digging into. So this is a program for grants of up to $200,000 for nonprofits. It's an average $150,000 grant, and churches qualify for this because you're a nonprofit. Each project should demonstrate significant energy and cost savings, significant emissions reductions, compelling cost effectiveness, alignment with the Justice 40 initiative, and financial need. And we have so many beautiful old churches in this state that desperately need some upgrades. I know that we have viable projects. But you might be wondering, what is the Justice 40 initiative? So the Justice 40 initiative is a focus on disadvantaged communities in one of the following areas: climate change, clean energy, energy efficiency, clean transit, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, and development of clean water and wastewater infrastructure. Disadvantaged communities can be identified through the Climate and Economic Justice Screening tool. And I will be sending this tool out to you in the follow-up email after this webinar, along with the recording. Many cities in Connecticut qualify as Justice 40, Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Wyndham, etc. But also some portions of cities qualify. So part of Manchester, part of Vernon. It's definitely worthwhile looking at the tool to see if you qualify. So what is covered and who is eligible? Energy efficiency, lighting, insulation, HVAC, roofing, fuel switching, and appliances. And any nonprofit 501c3 that owns their own building is eligible. So what is the application process? There are 3 tiers of participation. There are prime recipients, subrecipients, and partners. So the prime recipient will be a managing nonprofit that will assemble a portfolio of about 15 to 20 projects, apply for the funding, receive and disperse the funds, and also manage the grant reporting. A subrecipient will be a nonprofit that owns their own building, that wants to receive the funding, and submits a proposal project to the prime recipient, and then it goes to the government. A partner will be another organization or business, such as a vendor or Energize Connecticut. So for all of the folks on this webinar, houses of worship would be the subrecipient. Now, the official information for this grant has not actually yet been released. I'm telling you the most up-to-date information that I have, but we're also waiting to see more information. So some of the questions that we have an idea on are, so say if IREJN applied to be a prime recipient and I had 20 projects, I would probably want a majority of them to be from a Justice 40 community, but they don't all have to be from there. So I would have some leeway to add in some others if they want to apply and are eligible and can demonstrate the other factors. Another thing that we're not certain of is, can subrecipients, churches, apply through a different prime recipient if the first prime recipient, for whatever reason, isn't accepted into the program. So my goal to help all of you is to help you put together your project proposals and then find a good prime recipient to apply through. And there are a few that I can think of off the top of my head. So one could be the Interreligious Eco-Justice Network. We could totally, apply. Another would be Interfaith Power and Light, the national organization. They are a national religious organization that addresses climate change, and they could potentially apply throughout the whole, for the whole country. And so if I only had 5 project proposals, I would probably be looking for a group like that. Another organization could be another Connecticut nonprofit, and potentially, I guess, a municipality. I don't know if the federal government will be looking to have the state be a prime recipient. Again, these are questions that we don't have the answers to yet, but my goal is to help you guys get ready if you want this funding. It will be probably very competitive. The Renewing America's Nonprofit is a pilot program with $50 million in it. So it sounds like a lot of money, but on a federal scale, it's still pretty small. So it'll probably be pretty competitive. So the IREJN Energy Efficiency Program. So we're asking folks to participate in our energy efficiency program. So first, we're asking folks to participate in the Small Business Energy Advantage Program, which I will explain. We're asking your house of worship to hold a home weatherization campaign with the goal of getting at least 25 of your members to sign up. And IREJN can supply participating houses of worship with a toolkit of brochures, flyers, bulletin announcements, and social media posts. We're also asking that participating communities spread the word by hosting an informational session with 3 religious communities in your area or in your denomination if you wish. And this informational session can be in person or virtual. And again, IREJN will provide all of I will be doing the speaking, we'll provide the materials and the follow-up. We're just hoping that you can help us spread the word. We are excited to announce that in 2023, IREJN will be able to award 10 $1,000 small grants to assist houses of worship with energy efficiency measures. We will give priority to houses of worship in distressed municipalities or environmental justice zones. And I will send out the information on that. That is based on Connecticut metrics, and it's a bit more expansive than the Justice 40. More communities qualify. To qualify for this funding, participants must do the small business energy audit and undertake the energy efficiency measures. They must host a residential weatherization campaign in their house of worship, and they must help spread the word by hosting an informational session. So, what is small business energy assistance? This is a free energy audit or assessment for small businesses, in this case, your house of worship. So a vendor will come to your house of worship and conduct a thorough audit or assessment. And that vendor will provide you with a menu of energy efficiency measures. So they will tell you everything that you could do, from lighting to insulation to new windows. And you can then choose what you want to do. The cost can be paid in one lump sum, or it can be spread out over time in your electric bill with a no interest loan. And this is where this SBA program will be very helpful if you're interested in applying for the federal funding, because you have this free program that will help you determine everything that you need to do. And then you can choose if you would like to go forward before you know if you are eligible for federal funding. You can do the most affordable aspects on the list and save something more expensive for a federal grant if you get it. A subset of the Small Business Energy Advantage Program is the Micro Business Energy Advantage Program. And it is actually really good for churches because it's based on the usage of the building. It's perfect for houses of worship that are only used a few days a week. So in Eversource, it's 100,000 kilowatt hours per year. United Illuminating has a slightly different metric, but it works out to basically the same thing. And essentially, the vendor that I was talking to about this program said it's extremely rare that churches don't qualify for it. It's only if they are running a soup kitchen every single day that they might go over that usage. But if your house of worship qualifies, Energize Connecticut will fund 80% of your project up to a $20,000 total project cost. So a $20,000 project would be immediately rebated for $16,000, and the remaining $4,000 could be paid directly or added to your monthly bill in the form of that loan. And the great thing is that Energize Connecticut loan payments are net positive. The length of the loan is 6 months longer than the amount of time you would need to pay it off. Now, I will say that the MBEA program exhausted its funding last year in 2022, which was its first year, but it exhausted its funding by early fall. So if you think you qualify for this, now is the time to move to make sure you can access funding. So those are the programs for the houses of worship, for the churches. We've got good programs in Connecticut, opportunities for additional funding from the federal government. And as I said before, more information about the Inflation Reduction Act is coming out, over the next few months, and I'm going to keep you apprised of all of this as I find out. So, Home Energy Solutions. This is the program for residents. It's for homeowners and renters. It is a program of Energize Connecticut. And Energize Connecticut, these programs are paid for by a $1 to $2 fee on your Eversource or United Illuminating bill or your natural gas bill. And there are two versions of Home Energy Solutions. One has a copay and one is free for income eligible people. They're essentially the same thing though. So how does Home Energy Solutions work? Well, there is an application process. You can contact a vendor directly, or you can go through Energize Connecticut's website, but you get an application. The homeowners sign the application. Renters need their landlord to sign. It's pretty straightforward though. The energy weatherization company will come to your home or apartment and provide several weatherization services. There's a $50 copay for the market rate program, but the income eligible program is free. And on average, services are valued at close to $1,000. So it's really well worth it. So what happens during the HES visit? First, they conduct a blower door test and perform an energy audit. And what you are looking at is the blower door test. And what that identifies is leaks in your building, which can happen for a variety of reasons, including just the house settling. They weather strip around the windows and the doors, which really improves things. They install door sweeps. They swap out incandescent light bulbs with LED light bulbs. And once it's completed, you qualify for great rebates on insulation, HVAC, appliances, and those sorts of things. So here are some of the rebates and incentives. I put in bold the one for insulation projects. It's up to $1.70 per square foot, which is pretty much 50% off on insulation. And I will tell you that when I lived in New London, I lived in a duplex. It was one of those weird houses that had been converted into 2 apartments. And our landlord lived on the bottom floor. And I convinced him to do this program. And he did the HES program. And then he went ahead and did all of the insulation that they recommended. And his fuel bill was cut in half. He was so happy. I thought he was going to carry me around in a sedan chair. It was a really great experience, and it really improved our lives in the apartment. It made it much more comfortable. And you can read all of these other rebates and incentives There are incentives for replacing inefficient gas furnaces and gas boilers with qualifying gas furnaces and qualifying gas boilers. I will say, we are doing a webinar on heat pumps on June 7th. And before you replace a furnace or a gas boiler or a fossil fuel based furnace or boiler, please investigate heat pumps. They are extremely efficient. They do a great job heating and cooling. So I will send out that information with my follow-up email. But as you can see, there are incentives and rebates for a lot of different things. And actually, so air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps, there are significant rebates and incentives, up to $15,000 per home for a qualifying air source heat pump for existing electric, oil, and propane homes. The ground source heat pumps are up to $7,500 per home for electric or natural gas heated homes, and up to $15,000 per home for existing oil or propane heated homes. So as you can see, the home energy solutions weatherization audit gets you in the door for other incentives that are really, really great. So now that's the market rate version, rebates, incentives. The income eligible program is even better. And I know as churches, we are always looking to help folks that are struggling. And utilities are a leading cause of people losing their housing, period. So the income eligible program is free. There's no copay. Deeper weatherization services are also free. It's available for homeowners and renters, and it's available in single family, 2 to 4 unit apartment buildings, and large apartment buildings. So I'm looking right now at the income eligible requirements for 2022 to 2023. As you can see, the income eligibility is actually pretty high. If you are a single parent with 2 children, you would need to make under $64,230 per year to qualify, which probably a lot of folks in our church communities do qualify. So, and the reason is they're really trying to help as many people as they can, people for whom participating in these programs would just be a little too difficult if they had to do a copay, and they couldn't afford to actually do these upgrades. So let's talk about renters and landlords. Single family homes are obviously pretty straightforward. The homeowner signs it. If you're a renter with a landlord, then you've got to get your landlord on board, as I did when I lived in New London. So for apartment buildings, we do have home energy solutions and the income eligible program for those small 2 to 4 unit family residences. We have a lot of that type of housing in Connecticut. But the programs are for the utility bill payer, whether that person is the homeowner or the renter. And something for us as Christians, churchgoers, to consider is that 31% of renters in Connecticut are considered extremely low income. Here's the interesting thing. If 50% of the renters in a 2 to 4 family unit, or 2/3 of renters in a 3 family qualify for the income eligible, all of the tenants get income eligible benefits. So if you have a 4 family apartment building and 2 of your renters are income eligible, then everyone gets the benefits. And they do this regardless of the wealth of the landlord. The goal is to get the help to the people who need it. However, every renter needs to fill out the application with the name, the address, and provide their utility bill. And again, there's no copay. And this is where I think the 2 to 4 unit family residents are probably the most work to help people access the program, because you have to get the landlord and you have to get the all the renters to fill out the application. But this is where I think, as church folk, with our social justice committees and our strategies of reaching out to the community, I feel like we are uniquely positioned to do this work. And again, the audit includes the assessment, the air sealing, the shower filters, and the IE program also includes the LED light bulbs. If no one is income eligible in the apartment building, then the landlord pays for the light bulbs. So that is 2 to 4 family unit buildings. Like I said, it's probably, from our standpoint as a community groups, it's churches working in our communities, that's probably the most time-consuming aspect, but it is doable. Large apartment buildings, of which we have many in our larger cities, are 5 or more apartments. The owner has to fill out the application and the utility has to approve it. But it's pretty straightforward. Residents don't have to do anything. The process is between the vendor, the owner, and the utility. And once the application is approved, the first visit is within 1 to 2 weeks. And the work is completed within 1 to 2 months. So that's actually quite quick as well. I will say I was working in Waterbury and I heard horror stories about some of the housing. This one man told me that he was living in a house that had no insulation. There was an interior wall and an exterior wall and nothing in between. And another woman told me about an apartment she was living in where the heat was on the 2nd floor. There was nothing on the 1st floor. So in the winter, they would turn the heat up in the upstairs bedroom, or maybe they didn't even have control over the heat. It was one of those type of apartments. But anyway, the heat would be blasting in the upstairs, so the bedrooms were all incredibly uncomfortably hot. The downstairs, however, where they did most of their living, was cold and no one could get comfortable. And they were paying for the utility bills. They were paying upwards of $1,000 a month to have this housing that was completely uncomfortable all of the time. Too cold during most of the time when they were in it, but too hot when they were trying to sleep. And this is why I see these as justice issues. They are all connected, because how can you, if you have children in that environment, how can they succeed in school if they can't sleep at night because they're too uncomfortable to sleep? So again, after the audit, there are increased opportunities for weatherization with the income eligible. They do all the installation of weather stripping, interior caulking. They do the low flow shower heads. They do lots of insulation, repair or replacement of windows. They do the installation of carbon monoxide detectors. So it's very expansive. It's a great program. And the vendors we're so lucky in Connecticut that we have a really educated and engaged workforce, because the vendors really know these programs, they know how to access them, and they know how to help people get through them. So how to sign up for HES or HES-IE? Well, you can sign up at energizect.org, or you can call 1-877-WISE-YOUTH. I do have some vendors that are just very responsive to me. I'm happy to recommend them, but I have found that a lot of these vendors are great just as a general rule, but I'm also happy to help people talk to vendors and that sort of thing. Oh, we have a few upcoming events. Actually, on Wednesday is the Environmental Justice Bill, May 24th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then next Wednesday, June 7th, we're doing a webinar on heat pumps from 7 to 8. So I hope that you will be able to join us for that. And we are planning a webinar on solar. There's new federal funding, again, through the Inflation Reduction Act, that is going to allow nonprofits to take advantage of the 30% tax rebate that other people can take advantage of. We're not quite sure what it's going to look like, but we're excited about it. And so we want folks to get information about solar as well. However, I will say that it is critical that we do the energy efficiency work first, because if you are interested in solar, when they come look at your church building or your house for solar, they are going to size that solar array based on how much energy you use. So if you reduce the energy usage first, then you're not going to need as large a solar array. So it's ultimately going to be cheaper. So that's why energy efficiency is first. And the other thing that I wanted to highlight is that Dr. Catherine Hayhoe is this evangelical Christian. She is also a renowned, internationally known climate scientist. And we were fortunate enough to have her on a webinar in 2021, in the midst of the really first third of the pandemic. And she told us that 60% of greenhouse gas emissions could be eliminated through energy efficiency alone. So energy efficiency is a key tool to helping people reduce their financial stress, reduce their energy usage, fight climate change, and reduce air pollution. And I just put this slide back up to highlight the fact that this is just a fraction of money in our overall budget that would be really great if we can put this funding back in our budget. It will allow us to sustain the workforce that we need to do all of these programs that I just talked about. And, you know, these are local jobs. That's the great thing about energy efficiency. It creates local jobs in our local communities. And that's a terrific thing. I am going to, and I have these resources also, and I will send this whole slideshow. It is being recorded, and I will send out the various links to the climate and economic justice tool and the environmental justice communities in Connecticut as well. So I've got many resources for you, and you can also find things on our website at irejn.org. Let's see here. All right, it is 7:38. Is there anybody with questions? Q&A question. Yes. So someone asked, can the slides shown in this webinar be accessed after the webinar? Will the webinar recording also be available? Yes to both. IREJN does have a YouTube channel, and I will get this recording up this evening. And I will also send you the slides after I fix about 5 typos that I saw this evening. But yes, absolutely. And I am also available to help. If you email me directly, I am happy to talk to you about anything, answer questions. I think this is, you know, IREJN got our start in the late 90s, and I'm dating myself here, but we got our start around these fossil fuel power plants that were located in cities like Bridgeport, New Haven, and Montville. And I was a soprano soloist at First Baptist Church of West Hartford. And I had just read this article on these power plants when the pastor there got up and said, you know, some of us are concerned about the planet and we want to examine what our faith has to say about it. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's me. That's what I want to talk about, because I felt like the pollution, and of course in the late 90s, we were really just talking about air pollution. So, you know, we weren't even talking about climate change, but I was so appalled that people were so overburdened with these power plants. And that's really how we got started. So Mark and Barb want to know, our church owns 2 residential buildings, a parsonage, and the second being currently rented. Can we apply for home energy solutions? Yes, you can. And actually that raises a good point, is that if your church wants the audit, that would be the Small Business Energy Advantage Program. And again, that is a free assessment. If you have a parsonage or something like that, that would be through Home Energy Solutions. Amy wants to know, can you review what's available for churches? Do churches have to do the follow-up activities if they receive an assessment? We have a tiny church, and I'm not sure we could handle the follow-up activities. So the programs that are available for churches are the Small Business Energy Advantage, and that's the energy assessment where the vendor comes in and does a whole energy audit on your church. And then we'll provide you with a menu of things you can do. So you don't have to do any of the follow-up activities, but you may see something that is really apparent that will be really, really great, that will help you save money. So, but the answer is no, you don't have to do the follow-up activities. However, if you're a really tiny church and you're only used a few days a week, then you would definitely want to inquire and find out if you're also eligible for the Micro Business Energy Advantage program, which is a subset of the SBEA program. So basically, once you do the SBEA program, they will look at your usage and say, oh, you also are a micro business, and if your project cost is $20,000 or less, the MBA program will fund up to 80% of it. Diane Lorenzales said, thank you for this great discussion. Terry, you are a treasure. Thank you with the way you patiently explain this. I have to say, anyone who knows me knows I talk at the speed of light. So I am very grateful for Camila's patience and encouragement in having me slow down. So her question, Diane's question is, if a church has asbestos or lead paint, does a small business program help pay for the remediation? That is a really good question. I don't know. I know that the state of Connecticut began a remediation program for income eligible people for residences to help with that type of barrier. So if you have a house with asbestos or mold or something like that, you were typically not really able to participate in the home energy solutions because they didn't want to run a blower door test on something in a building that had asbestos or mold. However, then the last legislative session in Connecticut in 2022, they did pass a bill with funding to provide, I think it was up to 1,000 homes that had previously tried to participate in home energy solutions, but had been rejected for those barriers, an opportunity for remediation funding. So it exists in some level for homes, for residences, but I don't know about churches, and I will find out. I'm going to ask. So Mark Bark says, we will be renovating the front of our church, having discovered structural unsoundness. Would a Renew grant be available for any energy efficient work that may be a part of that project? I would think yes. I can't say for sure until we see the text of the grant request for proposals, but I would think yes. The thing that's interesting about the Renew grant is it not only includes the sort of stuff that you'd expect, like lighting and insulation, but also includes things like roofing, which is great. A lot of churches have roof issues. So I think, yes, it would, that would qualify. I reached out to my contact in DC, who's, we've sort of been in regular communication about this federal funding, and he's been great. He said he didn't have anything updated yet on the program, but that's why, Connecticut is so uniquely positioned in a good way for this federal funding, because one thing the federal government will want to see is some leveraging of their federal dollars. So if you have a proposal, if you can say, we are asking for X from the federal government, we have this much in rebates and incentives, we've agreed to finance X over a period of 10 years, that's going to go a long way to getting those proposals approved. And Connecticut has that opportunity. I was just in DC for a conference and talking to other faith-based environmental groups through Interfaith Power and Light, and those folks are training volunteers to go do the energy efficiency work, whereas we have an actual, entire workforce and economy built up around it. Let me see if there are any other questions. So that's anything in the chat? Anything in the Q&A? So, it's such a great opportunity for us to really help folks that are struggling. One of the things that we're really looking at this year is how these environmental issues intersect with other areas of need, of inequity, and energy efficiency is a key point. The MIT released a really cool tool looking at reducing global warming and overall global temperature. And you can sort of, I can send that out to you too. You can play around with it if you like, but basically you can move these different dial on different aspects to sort of see what will it look like if we increase coal production or increase solar production or increase, blah, 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 and decrease this and plant more trees. But one of the two things that actually made the biggest difference by a long shot was energy efficiency. So it's really a no-brainer. If we reduce the amount of energy used, we're all going to be in better shape. And I will say, one of the projects that I was just working on last week was submitting a letter to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Emissions Program, which is a cap and trade for power plants. And we were one of the things that we asked was for small power plants to be included in this program to reduce air pollution, because 91% of these smaller power plants were within 3 miles of a high asthma community. So if asthma is something your community deals with, reducing energy usage is one tool in the toolkit for helping combat that. When an energy audit is done, do they check first for mold, etc.? Yes, they do. They have to, because they can't do the blower door test and whatnot without knowing what's there. So yeah. For that person who just asked that question, are you referring to a home or a church? Or both? I know they definitely do it for homes, but it would be yeah, they definitely do it for homes. I definitely believe they do it for churches. But I will definitely follow up. Anything that I don't 100% know the answer to, I absolutely will find out for you. Home, yes, yep, definitely. So the person said, not sure if we have mold, so wouldn't know how to assess that. And I was hoping they would check first. That would be a really good question for the vendor. Honestly, like if you obviously, it's very easy for them to check for something like asbestos. I know they do obviously check for barriers, but I have no idea how granular they get with that. So that would be a good question for them, even just to alert them that you might have it, and then they can look a little deeper. Linda wants to know, does your organization ever send representatives to do a workshop on these topics at a church for its members and surrounding neighbors? Thanks for this great webinar. Yes, Linda, I do. I'm actually going to Cheshire in late June to talk to about 5 communities there, and I'm doing something in Willimantic in July. So yes, I'm happy to come to you and do a presentation for your church and for your surrounding neighbors or community. Yes, absolutely. My goal is to get the word about these programs out there and help people talk about how environmental concerns intersect with other ministries that we are already doing. Any other questions? So our heat pump webinar will be June 7th, Wednesday from 7 to 8. And again, if you are looking for, if you're in need of replacing a fossil fuel-based boiler or furnace, please come to our webinar on heat pumps. Heat pumps are extremely energy efficient. They heat and cool, and the technologies have really improved to the point where they can definitely keep up with our cold winters and hot summers, and they can keep up with our large church spaces. Amy said, where in Cheshire? I live in Cheshire. St. Peter's Episcopal Church. I think that's the name of it, off the top of my head. I think. I'd have to get back to you. I'll let you know. You might hear about it. Oh, Amy, I will. So Amy wanted to know how to find out when I will be there. I will let you know. I am pretty good about keeping our events up on our the IREJN website. We do have a Facebook page, and so I'm happy I put things there as well. And I will also just let you know when I find out. We're just picking the date right now, but it looks like late June. So. Any other questions? There is going to be quite a lot of money also coming from the Inflation Reduction Act for people, individuals, to do these things. If you're doing this energy efficiency work on your home and you're the homeowner or the landlord or whatnot, that is all tax deductible. And I believe the Inflation Reduction Act expanded those tax deductions and incentives and whatnot. We still don't know what those look like. It's taking quite a bit of time for the IRS to release that. And a lot of the funding in the IRA is through that. So Thayer wants to know what my email is. It is Terry, TERRI, at IREJN.org. And I will follow up with the email, with this recording, and my, all this information at the end. You should have it by, honestly, tomorrow. Any other questions? Thanks, guys. This has been really great. I'm so glad that you have attended this. You've joined me, and again, if you have friends in the community that you think would be interested in hearing about this information, you can surely send them the recording to this webinar. People obviously can email me directly. I'm happy to come speak, as mentioned before. So. Any other questions? Trying to remember, hopefully I got everything. Again, if you are a church, and we do have the small grant assistance program, $1,000 grants. It's not a huge amount of money, but it is real money, and we are excited to be able to do this. The first time we've ever been able to do something like this, so we're really excited about it, hoping to expand it in 2024. But I do have a application up on our website for that funding if you're interested. All right, guys. Well, I think without any other questions, I think we can say good night. I want to thank Reverend Harry Riggs and Jasmina for helping out with promoting this and whatnot. They got a lot of churches. Hey there, Reverend Riggs. You pop back on.
Thanks, Terry. It was great job, great information, super. And we multiply the message if churches invite you to come and share their communities, wider communities. So great.
This is absolutely, they're great programs. It's a real way to actively engage in justice in our daily lives and in our church homes. So hope that people take advantage of it. Feel free to reach out. Again, thank you everyone for joining me this evening. And Reverend Riggs, thank you so much for co-sponsoring this webinar.
Thanks, Camila, for interpretation.
Yes,
Awesome.
thank you, Camila. I hope I did not speak too quickly.
Have a good night.
All right, have a great night.